Wonder Woman 1984. Okay, so I recently got back from watching this today. I had been planning ever since we had a release date down. Well, there were multiple release dates before this started, right? I mean, before this actually was released. But I had decided I was going to be one of the first to go watch this movie because I absolutely loved the first movie a lot. It has its little flaws, but overall, I went in there quite afraid that it was going to be turned into some sort of story with an agenda, anti-male type, feminist sort of just shoved in your face type of narrative. And that was not the case. And I was extremely pleased. They also made Wonder Woman very relatable with her emotions. And she had such great depth of her character and now what's the word I'm looking for? Her growth as a character, the things that she had to learn along the way. And it was just so well done. And the action scenes were awesome. Her costume was awesome. I had been hugely down on Gal Gadot as the choice for Wonder Woman when she was announced. But when she showed up in Batman vs. Superman, I changed my mind very, very quickly. And I fangirled so hard when she first showed up in her in her outfit during the battle at the end of Batman vs. Superman. So when this was filming, I was super excited, but I decided that much like with the first movie, I was not going to watch any trailers. I was not going to read any reviews. I didn't want to know anything about anything. And I largely was able to stay away from things like that. However, it's kind of hard. I mean, by the time I was getting ready to buy tickets for the first Wonder Woman, I go online to search for, buying tickets. And of course, the Rotten Tomatoes score pops up. So I knew right away that it had received good critical acclaim and that people said it was good. Like regular people said it was good. But I didn't know anything more than that. And I didn't even want to see the scores at all. And I haven't even seen the scores yet for this one, except for the IMDb score when I went to go find some pictures that I could show for the review. Anyway, it's hard to escape certain things that start to float around about a movie sometimes. Being an active YouTube user, I see thumbnails, I see video titles. So I started to get the sense. I heard Patty Jenkins had made some remarks, but I haven't been reading any of their stuff. This was just paraphrased commentary I hear from other people, and I'm like, I don't want to hear. Don't say nothing. I don't want to know nothing about nothing. But I was starting to get the sense that this particular movie might be extremely shaky, and it might be just filled to the brim with a definite agenda, sort of wokeness type of narrative. And I didn't read anything specifically about it because I didn't want to, I've already said, I didn't want to hear anything. I wanted to just go in and just see for myself, because this is a film that really appeals to me. There are other films that maybe I'm a little interested in, but then I hear things about it and then I watch reviews about it and I find out what it's actually really about. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not interested because I just don't care, like Star Wars stuff. I saw the first Star Wars sequel and haven't seen the other two, and I don't even count them as sequels because I know what happens in them. And I know well enough, I understand well enough, and so I just have zero interest at all. Anyway, but I have huge interest in this, so I just didn't want to know anything. All right, that's a long-ass intro. Anyway, whatever. So I went into this a little bit, with some trepidation, like, oh gosh, but I will say that this film, in my opinion, was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. I will say it's probably not quite as good as the first one, but that's not necessarily because it's just bad in general, but maybe because the time that it takes place in. So to me, it felt so much more fun to see Wonder Woman the first Wonder Woman in a time that was 100 years ago, and everything was so different. The scenery was different. You know, the wardrobes were different, and so now she's taking place. This takes place in 1984, so it's a more modern, and it just, to me, for some reason, it just doesn't feel quite as, I don't know if magical is the right word, but it just doesn't feel quite as nostalgic to see her in this setting, in a modern day setting, as it did, you know, World War I type setting. So I don't know. And also, we're very used to her as a character. When we saw her in the original Wonder Woman, that was her first film. We really got to see her, how good of an actress Gal Gadot is, and, you know, the emotion that she brought to that role. And now it's kind of, I don't want to say old, because that's not the word for it at all, but we're used to it. It's not anything new. It's not anything that impresses us as if it's the first time. It's still impressive, I must say, because this film, I am such a, I don't know, sometimes I can get pretty emotional in some films, and this film brought me to tears too, just like the first one did. And I don't know if it's just, being sentimental about stuff, or hormonal stuff, or what the heck it is, but I was very emotionally affected by some of the scenes in here. This movie has a lot of heart in it, as far as the emotions tied to some of the storylines. I'm really trying to avoid spoilers, you guys. So so that I can mark this as a non-spoiler review. I thought about doing a live stream discussion about this today, but I don't know how many people may have seen it today. Maybe I will later tonight after. I don't know if I'm going to try to get this edited and up in time. But anyway, what I'm trying to get around to is that even if it doesn't feel like it's quite as good as the first one, it's not a disappointment. And it makes up for any sort of, let's say, deficiency compared to the first movie, with a very emotional connection, a lot of heart to the story. The plot is quite decent, in my opinion. I also liked the fact that they did not overdo her in the costume. So you know how in the first one, it took a while before she was fully revealed in her costume. She's just not constantly in Wonder Woman mode. She does make a costume appearance a little bit in the beginning, and then you go a long stretch before you see her again. And then it kind of goes, you know, back and forth. So she's just not constantly in this garb. And I think after a while that would probably it kind of, to me, less is more when it comes to things like superhero movies. So a lot of times, if you don't overdo the action, if you don't overdo the character being in their costume, it really kind of makes those moments when there is action, or when they are in their costume, it makes it more exciting, and it makes it just new and fresh. So if that makes any sense, I hope that makes sense. Another thing I liked about the movie, in addition to the fact that it really didn't, to me, come across as a woke agenda type narrative, honestly, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised by that. I have not seen any of the other stuff that people have said about it. I think I already said that. Maybe if I were to listen to what if I were to watch what they're talking about, maybe I could I guess you can read anything into a lot of stuff. If you want to go into this, reading something like that into it, maybe you could. I went into it aware that there was the possibility that this was there, that I had heard rumblings, and honestly, if it's there, to me, it was very subtle, if at all, and certainly nothing that bashes you over the head with that sort of thing. So I really, really appreciated that aspect about it. Another thing that I liked is that the bad guys in here, the antagonists, let's say, they had more shades of gray to them. They were more nuanced characters than the villains in Wonder Woman, and first Wonder Woman, where those villains were more one-dimensional, cardboard cutout type of, baddies. It just, couldn't really connect with them a whole lot on any sort of basic emotional level. They were just bad people that needed to be destroyed. And that was okay. It didn't really detract hugely at all, because I love the original Wonder Woman. It's in my top 10 of films of all time. But this particular movie surprised me with how emotionally connected I actually felt to the people who were playing the bad guys in here. Their motivations became, their motivations were clear. You could understand. They were relatable characters to an extent. And so that made the story around them much more complex and interesting and just, fascinating to watch. I was trying to, guess how it was going to end up. And I stopped trying to guess, and I just kind of went along for the ride and enjoyed every single moment of it. I'll tell you, this movie was quite a bit longer than the first one. I think it's close to 2.5 hours. You know what? I don't remember how long the first one was. I don't remember. But the trailers that they played were about, I asked the theater manager yesterday before we even went to go see it, how long were the trailers? And he said about 26 minutes. So trailers plus movie brings it like a minute or two shy of 3 hours, you guys. So go to the bathroom at least once or twice before it actually starts, because I didn't want to miss any of it. So I didn't want to have to, leave the theater. So I kept my liquid consumption to a minimum. What else is I going to say? Oh, yeah. I did actually take the time to write down some notes, because I knew I would sort of ramble and maybe forget stuff. And I'm going to mention everything that I wrote down here. But something else that I thought was kind of cool was that, and this isn't hugely spoilery, just mildly spoilery here, you guys, the invisible jet. The whole thing about the invisible jet, the way that was introduced, how they introduced it, it was, I thought, kind of pretty well done. The only complaint I had about that was at the moment that it's introduced, it kind of feels a little bit too abruptly. It feels like maybe they should have had a scene before that sort of built up to that, so that when it happens, it wasn't like, what? Oh, and you quickly get what's happening. But I feel like that being introduced a little bit earlier, before the time that it actually was, would have been a little bit more, I don't know, I just feel like it would have fit a little bit better. I'm at a lack of words here, you guys, but I think maybe when you see that part, you'll know what I'm talking about. But that's a very, very minor quibble, very minor. Another thing, this is also mildly spoilery. So, at the end of the first Wonder Woman, she's living in France, I think, and she walks out of her place and she jumps off of her little rooftop area or something like that. She jumps off of there, and at first you're like, wait a second, what? Wonder Woman's flying? And you could assume, oh no, she's not flying, she's just jumping, or, well, what? If she's flying, how did this happen? Well, that all gets explained in this movie. She is flying at the end of the first Wonder Woman. I can't remember if it shows her flying in Justice League. Well, yeah, I can't remember if it shows her flying in Justice League, because honestly, I don't recall if I was even looking for that or not, but that's a thing here. And the way that is introduced also makes sense. Like the things that they introduced, like the invisible jet and the flying, and how Cheetah becomes Cheetah, and how Steve shows up, because I was also really curious to find out how are they going to answer this question. It was not going to make any sense at all, because he's dead. He's dead. The character's dead. How can he appear again? Yeah, you could say, oh, he's resurrected. He's brought back to life. But that can only go but so far. After a while, the whole thing of a character dying starts to lose its punch when they can just be brought back again and they'll be alive again. That's what part of the reason why I lost interest in Supernatural after about season 5 or 6, because they kept recycling the same storyline. It was like, okay, well, Dean's dead, but no, he won't be dead for long. He'll be back in the next episode, that sort of thing. It gets old, and you lose your, what's the word? You lose your appreciation for a character when their demise doesn't seem as threatening, or somebody put it. I wrote this quote down. Geez, I can't remember where it was, but something about how death is what makes things so much more important, because you know something's not going to last. So when characters can just die and be brought back and die and be brought back, not talking about hero characters, but humans. Steve Trevor's a human. He's not a demigod. He's not a Wonder Woman. He's not a Superman. So when that happens with characters, it's just, after a while, it just loses it's just not. But anyway, whatever. That's also a long-ass way of trying to say that the way they explained the thing about Steve makes complete sense. It's not hokey. It's not ridiculous. That, was well done. I thought, like I said, also the flying thing was well done. The invisible jet thing was well done. I just, with the exception of what I mentioned about that already, the acting in here was excellent. Very, very good. Of course, Gal Gadot, her emotional range, her acting in here was just, I want to say, even better than what we've seen her do before in this character. She had already demonstrated that very well in the first movie, but in this one, she just really hits it home, you guys. Is so good. She just, I have nothing but praise for the way she plays this character. I'm so impressed with her acting. Pedro Pascal, his acting was extremely well done, I must say. Very relatable characters. Also, Kristen Wiig, if I'm saying her name right, Christian or Kirsten, whatever, you know who I'm talking about, Cheetah. Both of those two actors did an extremely good job, and I didn't know anything about the type of character he was going to be playing, but I did know that she was going to be Cheetah. And I remember when I heard that she was cast as Cheetah, I had been saying, I don't know, I'm just not convinced. And the whole thing about Cheetah's never really been my favorite villain, but I know that she's one of the top Wonder Woman villains. But Christian Wiig, just say Wiig, Christian or Kirsten, whatever. Cheetah. Her character was well done, and the actress was very convincing. And yes, she's comedic in here because, I've mostly seen her in comedic roles. I saw her in Bridesmaids, and she was very comedic, as she is, but at the same time, you could see that she had that dramatic range to her as well. She could play a sad, dramatic, she could play a good dramatic role. And she did that in here as well. So she was fully capable of pulling this off, and she did. So any sort of issues I felt like I would have with her before. I mean, I wasn't hugely down on her, not like I was Gal Gadot, but I was just, I don't know, we'll see. And I liked her performance. It was convincing. It was well done. Everybody's performances in here were just excellent. It started off what I felt like it started off kind of lighthearted, the movie did, and I was like, oh, please don't go the cheesy route, But then it very quickly took on a more serious tone, and I was really glad to see that. It wasn't like super dark the entire time, but very serious. It wasn't. They really weren't playing around when they got to the meat of the story, and the more lighthearted moments faded away, as they should, because the story is starting to, you're getting really into the nitty gritty of what's going on. and things are getting much more serious, you can't really intersperse comedic stuff too much, or it takes away the effectiveness of the seriousness. So, if that makes sense. Anyway, I think I've touched on everything I meant to mention. And there were a few things that I forgot to write down that I remembered as I was talking here, yammering. So I don't think I've got anything else to add. I guess I'm going to go ahead and wrap this review up. And I would like to know what you guys think of this movie. If you liked it as much as the first one, or better than the first one, or less than the first one. I mean, I almost want to say I liked it as much as, and yet at the same time there were those qualities that I mentioned that kind of makes it feel like it's not quite up to the level of Wonder Woman, the first one, but at the same time it had these other things to it that helped balance out those weaknesses. And so it's honestly hard to say. It's weird because I feel like I can say that it's not quite as good as the first one for the reasons I explained, but yet at the same time, I liked it about as much as the first one, which seems contradictory, but I don't know. Maybe subsequent viewings would change my mind, and I would it would put it more firmly in a certain slot in my head. But honestly, I was not displeased when I left the theater. I was relieved, and I was happy, and I look forward to seeing it again, which I will be. So anyway, I guess that's it. Don't have anything else to add. Maybe I'll do a live stream discussion of it tonight, maybe not. I do not know. It all depends on my energy level, which it's not late, but by the time I get around to doing something like that, it might be. We'll see. I don't know if I'd try to do a live stream before or after. I don't know, whatever. I'm going to shut up, you guys. I knew I was going to forget something, you guys, so I'm going to tack this on right at the end of my other review. Stick around a little bit after the credits start because, and there was one other little small complaint I had about the movie. Stick around a bit after the credits start because there is a really cool, I won't say post-credit scene because it doesn't happen at the very end. It happens a little, like let's say mid-credits. Not even halfway through the credits, but a little bit after the credits start. Hang around. You're going to see a really cool scene. I was super excited when I saw it. I fangirled inside. And so I just wanted to mention that in case you guys hadn't heard it already. I had heard that. That's why I knew. I'd heard that there was going to be something after or during the credits. That's why I knew to stick around. But the other little tiny complaint that I was going to mention, and it's a very minor, silly one, is that I was really hoping they would have done the main Wonder Woman theme music at the end. Well, I didn't sit all the way through the end of the credits, so maybe they did. But you know how in the first one, they had this really cool, outro tune with all the cool graphics and everything. They didn't have that so much in this movie. It was just basic credits with some little glitchy type of graphic stuff going on. And it wasn't the Wonder Woman main tune at the end. That was a disappointment because I was really looking forward to it. I mean, you do hear the tune some throughout the film, but not at the end like how they did in the first movie, which was such a fun little segment to watch when I first saw it. But anyway, okay, that is definitely it for this one, unless I remember something else, but I don't think I will. So I'm going to really go away this time. Adios.